Hi guys, welcome back to D Squared Classroom. Today we are honored to have with us Dr. Preethi Pirlamarla, who is the heart failure director at Mount Sinai Queens. And I had the pleasure of working with her when she was at the main campus of Mount Sinai doing her fellowship. Hi Preethi, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So as a very quick intro, which is hard to do for her, Dr. Pirlamarla is board certified in internal medicine, cardiovascular disease, nuclear cardiology, and advanced heart failure and cardiac transplantation because she's obviously an overachiever. And her clinical experience covers a broad range of heart failure management with research interests including cardiogenic shock, mechanical circulatory support, cardiac transplant, and management of acute heart failure. Welcome, Dr. Pirlamarla. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. So I thought I'd start out by addressing the fact that it's February and it's Heart Month. And so there's been a lot of talk this month and promotions about how to be heart healthy. So I'm curious, as a heart failure cardiologist, what would you say is your number one recommendation to your patients as far as what they can do or lifestyle changes that would impact their heart health?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's a great question. And a lot of, my patients ask us that in the clinic, what is the one thing I can do to get better control of my health? And I always tell them that the single most important thing that you can do as a lifestyle change is to change your diet. No matter how much you exercise or how active you are, which is always a good thing, the number one lifestyle change you can make is to change your diet. And when I say that, I mean more specifically in things like decreasing your salt intake. This is something that's very important for cardiovascular patients and especially heart failure patients because salt is modulated very carefully in the body by the brain and the kidneys. And we're finding more and more on the effects that it has on the heart, on blood pressure, and how you retain water, etc. And so it becomes very important. And one of the ways that you can do that is by staying away from as much processed foods as possible, eating whole grain foods, less processed foods, fruits, vegetables, etc. Really go a long way in improving your cardiovascular health.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you hear it just in everyday life that, diet's number one. But certainly in heart health, that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for sharing those specifics because, sometimes just saying, lower your salt intake isn't enough. So thanks for describing the reason why. Uh,
Sure.
Okay, so next question. We talk a lot about medical devices on this show. I may be partial to them because that's mostly what I do. But technology in this space has been growing and advancing rapidly. So I'm curious, what device or devices are you most excited about, either that are existing now or kind of coming down the pipeline?
Sure, thank you. And it's such a great question. I love this question so much because, it speaks to really how fast and how innovative the field of heart failure is becoming. And as you had mentioned and as we had talked about before, not so long ago, 10, 15 years ago, all we had was ICDs and or LVAD. And,
Yeah.
the the world is changing so much and there's new devices that are coming out or that are being studied. And what's particularly amazing about it is that not one single device, not all of them target one specific thing about heart failure. They are across the spectrum. So it's for me, I might be taking the easy way out here, but it's hard for me to say if there's one specific device that I'm particularly excited about because I'm kind of excited about all of them and see what comes out of them. And, to name a few, as we know, we had CRT devices, but now we have things like vagal stimulation devices, cardiac modulation devices. We had cardiomems and other, devices that are used for remote monitoring that help us monitor, volume status in patients. We have so many devices that are coming out that target HFrEF patients or heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, HFpEF patients, heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. We have devices for patients with valvular disease, we have the, edge to edge mitral valve, edge to edge repair. We have other potential prosthetic valves that are also kind of coming through the pipeline. And so as we have been progressing, the devices are becoming more and more innovative. And it really speaks to just how exciting heart failure is and just how much is encompassed in the world of heart failure. So I think overall, I think heart failure is just being a very exciting place to be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm seeing it in conferences and things like that, that there's constantly some new concept, and not even just a new device that existed in some other way before, but a totally new concept. I remember when the contractility modulation device first came out.
Yeah.
Isn't that a CRT, or isn't that this? And no, it's something totally different. So,
Different.
so yeah,
Yes.
if our audience isn't familiar with any of those, I recommend you look them up, because it's really some pretty cool science that's out there. Okay, you ready for speed round?
Definitely.
Okay, so number one, what's your favorite organ?
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say the heart, being a heart failure cardiologist. But if you had to question me a little further and say, what is my favorite part of the heart? I would probably have to say it's the right ventricle. It's always been a fascinating part of the heart in how compliant it is and how much it bounces back, after heart failure, or pulmonary hypertension. And just, we're finding so much about how to measure the function of, the right ventricle. And so much of it is that the more we know, the more that we realize we have to go in learning about its properties. So it really is a very interesting part of the organ. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's its own organ in itself. So
wow.
So
Oh, you went deep on that one. I love it. That, I feel like now you got me thinking about the right ventricle in such a different way.
Yeah, it's very exciting for sure.
Awesome. Okay, two, what's your favorite resource for heart failure patients?
Oh, that's a great question. I would have to say it's Harboring Hearts. It's an organization which you could probably speak to even more than I can. But as you know, the heart failure population, but the situations that they have to deal with emotionally, and some of them, what they have to deal with in terms of socioeconomic, family, etc. Heart failure is, a very big burden on many patients and their families. And so Harboring Hearts really helps them give that extra support in any way that they need. And so I like that about Harboring Hearts.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Obviously, I'm biased to think that that's a great resource, because I work with them, but I work with them because, they are such an incredible organization. So they offer emergency housing, food, transportation, and really any other critical needs for these patients that are undergoing, these types of procedures that are, really kind of upend the whole family. And Mount Sinai happens to be one of our longest standing and strongest partners for both adult and pediatric heart patients. So love that answer. Okay, last one is fun. What's your favorite app?
Oh, it has to be a tie, I think, between Spotify and Strava. And I'm a huge fan of Strava. So, and for anyone who probably also uses it, Strava is an app where you can track all of your physical activity, whether it's running, biking, swimming, etc. It's kind of its own little social media world for people who like to stay active. And so I get to kind of see what other people are doing, and it keeps me accountable when I'm not being as active as I should be. So I think those are probably my two, which is funny because I listen to music while I use my Strava. So that's probably why they go hand in hand.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. Yeah. I'd love to hear at another time what's on that Spotify playlist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you looped me into the Strava thing. And, I don't know how I feel about it, because I feel like it makes me maybe push a little bit too hard. I'm like, everybody's gonna see this run that I did. but yes, you sucked me in. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Pirlamarla, so much for your time and for sharing with our audience. And I hope that everybody learned a little bit today from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.